Good morning. Today is Wednesday, May 19th, 2021. So over the last couple of days, the Yom Tov of Shavuos, we in Montreal and communities all over the world outside of Israel had the opportunity in Shul to be able to hear Birchas Kohanim, the blessing of the priests of the Kohanim. Excuse me, I apologize. That they offer during the Musaf service on the days of Yom Tov. In Israel, that blessing is offered by the Kohanim every single day in the synagogue during the prayers. But outside of Israel, much less frequently. And yesterday and the day before, we had the opportunity. Beautiful, beautiful mitzvah of being blessed by the Kohanim. And the blessing comes from this week's Torah portion, the Parsha of Naso. This Shabbos, we read the Parsha of Naso. And we read in this Parsha the text of the blessing, the source of this practice. Vayedaber Hashem el Moshe Lemor. Excuse me. God speaks to Moshe the following words: Daber el Aharon vel bonav Lemor. Say to Aharon, his brother, who is the Kohen Gadol, the first priest, and his children, who will succeed him as Kohanim for all times. Ko savaru es b'nei Yisrael. This is how the priests, the Kohanim, should bless the Jewish people. Emor lehem, say to them, and then follows the famous blessing: Yivarechecha Hashem v'yishmerecha. May God protect you and bless you. Yo'er Hashem, Yisa Hashem, the famous Birchas Kohanim, the famous priestly blessing. There's a problem with this passage. And that is that we already have an earlier passage with a mitzvah for Aharon to bless the people. And that occurred in Vayikra, in the Parsha of Shmini, the third book of the Torah. We are now in Bamidbar, the fourth book of the Torah. But several weeks ago we read in the Parsha of Shmini, when it was discussing the details of the sacrifices in the Mishkan, the Torah said, Vayisa Aaron es yado al ha'am vayivarachem. And Aharon lifted his hands in front of the people, and he blessed them. But what was the text of that blessing? The Torah doesn't say. It just says Aharon blessed the people. So the Ramban Nachmanides says that back in Vayikra, that was a one-time blessing. That was a blessing that occurred at the conclusion of the dedication of the Mishkan, of the sanctuary. It was some other blessing. He blessed them, whatever he blessed them. It was a one-time thing. Our Parsha, this Shabbos, the Parsha of Naso in the book of Bamidbar, this is a mitzvah for the Kohanim Ledoros, for all generations, every single day, for the Kohanim to bless the Jewish people. As I mentioned, and in Israel, even today, it occurs every single day in the synagogue. Here it occurs on Yom Tov, but it is a separate mitzvah. Okay, no problem with that. But Rashi, the famous medieval commentator, has a different approach. Rashi says that Aharon in Vayikra, in the Parsha of Shmini, said the blessing to the Jewish people whose text is in our Parsha, Naso. Yivarechecha Hashem v'yishmerecha, etc. Shmini is the first part of that blessing, meaning the commandment to bless, and the text occurs later in our Parsha. There is a slight support for that, because In the earlier passage, I read to you, Vayisa Aaron es yadav el ha'am. Aaron lifted his hands towards the people and blessed them. And that seems to be the support for another name that we use for Birchas Kohanim, the priestly blessing. We also call it Nesias Kapayim, the raising of the hands, because that is an action that the Kohanim perform when they bestow this blessing. They raise their hands. All right, it's not conclusive, but Rashi's approach begs the following question. Why mention the obligation of the Kohen to bless the people back in the portion of Shemini in the book of Vayikra, and only give the text of what that blessing is later in our parsha in the book of Bamidbar? Why not put the two together? And furthermore, it makes more sense to put the whole thing back in Vayikra. After all, the name that we call Vayikra is Leviticus, the laws of the priests and the Levites. It's about the sacrifices. And the context in Vayikra is about the sacrifices. And the priestly blessing comes within the context of those sacrifices. Why include the text of the blessing in our Parsha of Naso, where, when we read it this Shabbos, we will see it's completely out of context? What comes before those two lines, those three verses, and what comes after has no connection to it whatsoever. It's as if you took a couple of verses and you just plopped them down there for no reason. It doesn't belong there. So I want to suggest a reason. It's inspired by an idea I read from Rabbi Leibel Hyman. And it's based on this concept. I mentioned this last week in a different context. And that is, there's a very big difference between the mood of the book of Vayikra, Leviticus, and the mood of the book of Bamidbar that we're reading now. Vayikra in general, with exceptions, but in general, the narratives that are there, the people are united. There is this gathering that completes the construction of the Mishkan, serving God, united. God is accepting the prayers and the sacrifices. God is blessing the Jewish people. In the book of Bamidbar, there is an ominous decline in civility and in harmony. If it was a movie, you would notice that when the movie gets to the book of Bamidbar, certainly all of a sudden the sky gets dark and the music gets tense, and you're given these cues, something really bad is about to happen. And there are many examples of this. For example, there are narratives in our Torah portion this week of Naso that are dark and complex with an undercurrent of controversy and strife. The passage about Sota, the passage about Nazar, we've discussed these before, we're going to discuss them again, but they are difficult, they are acrimonious, they are worrisome. And next week, it starts to fall apart completely. The Jews start complaining, and then comes the sin of the spies, and then comes the rebellion against Moshe, and etc., etc. Bamidbar is just a dark, ominous mood. This bracha, this blessing of peace, which ends with the famous words, V'yasem lecha peace, and God says, I will grant you peace. It needs to be here in the book of Bamidbar, because it is more necessary when problems and challenges are arising to remember the need to work on peace. So the mitzvah is in Vayikra, where it belongs. But God communicated the words of the blessing and placed them where they are most needed, here in the book of Bamidbar. And this is a practical lesson for every one of us. If we are facing a difficult situation, a contentious, challenging situation, if we're facing a crisis, we need to try to remain calm, not to respond from emotion, but to think about what will be helpful. What will make the situation better, not just what I feel I need to get off my chest. What will actually make the situation better, and we need to invoke that. We, today, Israel, the Jewish people, the Jews of Montreal, Hampstead, Côte Saint-Luc, we are facing a challenge. The incidents on Sunday here in Montreal and continuing on Monday, these incidents are real. We must keep in mind SPVM, speaking from my perspective, Hampstead Public Security, they are amazing in their proactive reaching out, taking measures, being visible, responding immediately. We need to take measures to increase and enhance our own security, and we are doing that. We need to engage with leaders in other communities to restore calm and safety. And we need to remind ourselves at this most vulnerable moment that our ultimate goal is peace. In Israel and around the world, including right here in Montreal. Mansour Abbas is the head of an Islamic political party in Israel. It is absolutely incredible to think, and this, regardless of your opinion about this, but it is incredible to think that about 10 or 11 days ago, we came within perhaps a day of forming a new government in Israel with Abbas's political party as part of either forming or supporting the forming of that new government in Israel. Tragically, the events over the last 10 days have made that impossible to reach for the time being. But listen to what Mansour Abbas did and said. And again, this is after losing any chance of a new government in Israel. He visited the city of Lod. You may know, has been the subject of rioting, terrible, horrible rioting and destruction over the last 10 days or so, maybe longer. And he visited the Dosa synagogue. That is a shul that was destroyed and desecrated by rioters. In Lod, a city where Israeli Jews and Israeli Arabs had been living in a certain amount of coexistence until there were all-out riots and destruction. And here's what Abbas said. He said, "We are willing to take part in restoring the synagogues that were harmed. I will lead it." Even in a time of war, the principles of Islam say it is forbidden to harm holy places. I recognize that there are those among us who will have difficulty with those words, who may disagree with those words. That's fine. We can disagree about how we understand it. I'm just reporting what the man said. Especially, he said, if it comes from Muslims, because we are not like that. Islam is not like that, and true Muslims are not like these people. And therefore I came to Lud. Because relations between Arabs and Jews must be restored in order to treat the spiritual trauma that people have, to restore the infrastructure, especially the holy sites, and of course, the relationship between people. Again, we can disagree about how we understand those words, whether we agree. We can disagree about that. But listen to what Yair Revovo, who is the mayor of the town of Lud, said. He said that Abbas had done a noble act and showed the kind of leadership we need so badly. And he said further, again, this is the Jewish Israeli mayor of Lud, Yair Revivo. Abbas, from my point of view, is a reason for optimism after this entire insane week we have gone through it. I'm very emotional about it because I don't find a lot of people who would do it. I'll tell you the truth. I don't find a lot of people who would do that either. But we can never stop looking for it. And that's why the bracha is here. That's why the blessing is transposed into our parsha in a time of contention and difficulty and challenge, to remind us that if you are entering a situation of division and contention and strife, don't forget to focus on peace as the ultimate goal and let that guide you through. My friends, I wish you all a great day. Stay safe, be careful, but don't become cynical, because we will get through this. We have allies, we have strengths, and we are right. And we will get through this together. My friends, I want to wish you a great day. And I look forward to seeing you all soon in person. And it looks like that day is coming. And I look forward to it. I want to urge everyone, follow the steps of public health. Do not take leniencies at this point, because we're going in the right way. And only if we are careful in the rules will we get there. And please, please, if you are not yet vaccinated, please do it right away, and urge everyone around you to do it as soon as is possible, because that will lead the way out of this. Have a wonderful day. I look forward to seeing you soon.